This is for the unbelieving, the wee, real cool ones. This is for the unbending, the black as the night is beautiful ones. Oh, that's my favorite line, my favorite page in Kwame Alexander's The Undefeated. It is a book that the first time I read it gave me goosebumps. Beautifully written, like a song. As soon as I read it, I knew it was going to be important. It was one of those books that just gets inside you and you carry with you until you can talk about it later. That was about maybe 4 weeks ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. I read it at the same time I read Stamped by Jason Reynolds, which was adapted from Ibram Kendi's Stamped from the Beginning. And it was right in the midst of the most tumultuous summer I've ever experienced. It's taken me this long to be prepared to teach with this book. So today we're going to dive into the Write About routine and focus really on steps 1 and 2, which typically starts with a first reading. However, I just don't know that I can do a first reading justice. So if you're on YouTube, in the description down below, you'll see a link to Kwame Alexander's reading. If you're on Facebook, it's in the comments. If you're straight on the blog, it's in the blog as well. I encourage you to go and let Kwame Alexander, the author of this text, be your first reader so that you can let this text wash over you in the way that only he can orchestrate, and then come back to me. We're going to go ahead and dig in deeper into a second reading. Only the second reading isn't going to take a look at the text itself. It's going to take a look at the afterword. So if you haven't done that already, pause here, go listen, go watch, and come back to me. We're going to dig in for that second reading and go a little deeper together. Awesome. Hopefully you have watched Kwame read the text. You've read a copy of your own or found a copy that you could dig into for a first reading. I'm going to go ahead and read the afterword. And our goal here in reading the afterword is to clarify and understand the text better. What is it really about? This text that he's written about the undefeated. I love that last page of the text where he says that line, this is for the undefeated. This is for you and you and you. This is for us. And watching him read it live, he repeats several of those lines. The one in particular, this is for the undefeated. And he says you and you and you. And he even names some people who I imagine are in the audience that night. And it's just such a powerful prose, right? It's such power that he wields with his words. And I've had an opportunity to see him live, and he is a master of this craft. So with that, I want to introduce you to more of his words as I read the afterword he wrote in the same text in The Undefeated. So here we go. I started writing this poem in 2008. That was the year my second daughter, Samaya, was born, and 3 months later, Barack Obama became the first African-American president of the United States. This poem was my tribute to both. I wanted to establish from the very beginning that much of what I'm talking about in this poem, so much of American history has been forgotten, left out of the textbooks, and that to truly know who we are as a country, we have to accept and embrace all of our woes and wonders. So I wrote a poem because I wanted my daughters to know how we got to this historic moment, or as the famous Mahalia Jackson spiritual says, you know my soul looked back and wonder, how did I make it over? I wrote a poem about Black Olympians such as Jesse Owens and Wilma Rudolph undermining the false narrative of white superiority by racing to gold in front of the whole world. About Malcolm X urging Blacks to fight for freedom, justice, and equality no matter the method or the cost. About enslaved Africans pushing on with an unwavering fighting spirit of hope and faith. Faith that one day they would be free, or that their children or their children's children would become the masters of their own destinies. About Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and the Harlem Renaissance, about cultural expression and liberation in the Black arts movement, about Dr. King's acceptance speech for the 1964 Nobel Peace Prize, about a promised land without racial injustice, poverty, and war, about civil rights marchers chanting, "We shall overcome," and demonstrating across the South, about Jackson about Jack Johnson and Muhammad Ali boxing racial prejudice in and out of the ring, about Black Civil War soldiers saving a union that refused to see them as equals, about Black Lives Matter. About Black Lives Matter. About Black Lives Matter. Because we are Americans, because we are human beings. But mostly I wrote a poem to remind Samaya and her friends and her family and all of you, and to remind myself to never ever give up, because as Maya Angelou wrote, we may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated. It may even be necessary to encounter the defeat so that we can know who we are, so that we can see, oh, that happened and I rose. I did get knocked down flat in front of the whole world, and I rose. Keep rising. As happens with so many of my read alouds on here, I feel like it's important for us to stop and let it breathe. I encourage you to have your writer's notebook with you every time we do a lesson together. And at this point, if you're ready to quick write, I encourage you to go straight into that. If you're not quite ready to quick write, then I encourage you to download the copy of the text that I have up on the blog, or go back and read a copy that you've purchased or found of your own, and mine it now for those keywords. What are the words that speak to you about what this text is really about? And then we'll take those and go into our quick write. When I first planned this lesson, I'm going to just do a voiceover of mine. So if you need to pause and do your own thinking ahead of this, go for it. If you want to listen and then come back to the pause here in a second, you can. When I was planning for this, I hadn't actually read that afterword aloud, just to be truly transparent. And I was thinking, gosh, you know what I'm going to write about? I'm going to jot down names. I'm going to jot down names of people I don't know very well. I'm going to jot down Cheryl. I don't really know who Cheryl is. And then in reading that afterward, I feel like the names matter, and the topic matters more. If I were going to take this one step further and go into learning more about what Kwame is talking about, I can learn about the individuals. I think that's important. I think the biographical contributions of the individuals he points out in the text are really, I feel like there's value in that. I also feel like there's value in some of the implied or implications of this text. Some of the ones that come up to me, some of them come straight from the text, like this idea of an imperfect union, right? Perfect union to establish justice. Like that plays in my head, that line, but it really is imperfect. I want to capture the way he did when he punctuates Black Lives Matter. He puts a period between each word and he repeats it 3 times. Black Lives Matter, right? As if to stamp it in our consciousness. I'm going to put down the last line in the text is for us, right? This isn't just for your diverse book collection. This is for all of us, which makes me think of this idea of shared history. Another something this makes me think of, as I was reading it, I got a little emotional, but in one of the documents that I've read in the past couple of weeks about opening our schools again with equity, it talked and it encouraged us to decentralize white tears. And that line has just kind of played around in my periphery. I haven't given it a whole lot of attention, but we don't want to focus there, right? We want to decentralize that. It's not about my experience. It's about getting into someone else's. So I'm going to write down the word empathy as well. All right, if you haven't gone back and done that third reading and mind your own words, I encourage you to do that. If there were any that I mentioned that you want to go ahead and grasp onto, go for it. Add them to your list. Right now, this is what my notebook is looking like, right? Just kind of the stream of consciousness. I even did start with the word Cheryl because that was my first impression before I read it with you. which is part of the power of doing this as a shared experience, right? I get to, as the instructor, have the experience over and over again, maybe for the fourth, fifth, sixth time. Every single time it's different. Every single time I do a lesson, whether it's with a group of students or a group of adults, I learn something new, which is part of the reason that I keep coming back for this kind of work. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and grab one of those words and enter into a quick write. So go ahead and do that for yourself. I was thinking I was going to do something around shared history, but I also think this idea that that was in that recommendation document around equity and making space for conversations about race and diversity and inclusion really comes back to that idea of decentralizing white tears. How, as a white educator, do I enter into those conversations without taking them over, without making it about me and my experience? So I'm going to play around with that for a few minutes, or just one, right? Maybe a couple. Sometimes I think with a quick write, a minute doesn't do it justice. So this might be a quick write that I take for a minute, and then I follow that strategy of looping. After the minute goes, I grab a word and loop that down in for another minute and keep going. It might be a time when I go ahead and write for 3, 4, 5 minutes, just see how long I can go before I'm exhausted. And instead of setting a timer, set a stopwatch. That way I can look up and go, oh my gosh, I wrote for 7 minutes. In fact, that's what I'm going to do, and you'll see on the blog then the results of that. At this point, I encourage you to do your quick write, but let me go ahead and talk through steps 3 and 4 and let you know what some of the resources are that are available to you for that work. So step 3 is read more. So after your quick write, I want you to think about a topic that comes out of that might compel you to write more or find out more. And so one thing that I'll let you know about this text, if you're able to get your hands on it, is Kwame does a little snippet about each of the people that are featured in the illustrations, and the illustrator, Kadir Nelson, does a fantastic job of portraying Kwame's sentiment in this text. On the blog, when you download the copy of the text excerpt, what I've done is gone through and listed the names of those people. So even though you don't get the snippet, you could still use that as a jumping off place. If there were a name that you didn't know or a biography that you wanted to find out more about, you could definitely use those as a jumping off place. Each of them could be easily searched, and you could go beyond the text in that way. Our goal would be, in the target that I forgot to mention earlier, is so that we can learn more about important things and important people and important events, right? So we're going to write about a person or a topic today by using multiple sources. Sometimes even in the case of this picture book, the multiple sources are woven in the author's note and the additional information in the back. So I do encourage you to get your hands on this or to comment on the blog and win a copy. Wouldn't that be awesome? I'll send you one for free. That'd be super awesome. I'd love to share this text with so many people because it was one that kind of stopped me and held me speechless, almost breathless, for several weeks before I was ready to talk about it. So your write like today might then just be the result of what you've learned. Share with us. Share who you found out more about, or share what you found more about. And in my case, if I go down this path of decentralizing white tears, it might even be something I discovered about myself or other people, or this experience as a human being that I'd like to share with people. So all of those qualify as that write about. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop here. I'm under 15 minutes, which I think is the first time that's ever happened. Feel free to jump on the blog, grab up the resources, comment, add your write about, and win a copy of the text. Otherwise, I just hope to share this experience with you. So it's Tuesday, my friends. For some of you, your kids just started back to work, and I applaud you for being here. Thank you so much, and have a great night.